Welcome to Mac Geek Gab, and our quick tip of the week comes from listener Rod L in our Discord, who shares that iOS 17 adds a new composition setting in the camera settings. So if you go into the settings app, go to the camera section, scroll down to the composition section therein, there is a new level, or as photographers seem to like to call it, a spirit level setting. And if you turn that on, what it will do is put a little white line, or a little line in the middle of a thin white line in the center of your picture. And as you are tilting your phone, it will go yellow when the phone is perfectly level. And that way, and this will happen in both, I believe, both portrait and landscape mode. And this way, you know that your phone is shooting a level picture. You can also turn on grid here, which is really helpful for aligning things and other composition options. More quick tips like this, plus your questions answered, and maybe even some cool stuff found today on easy for me to say, on Mac Geek Gab 1003 for Monday, October 9th, 2023. Greetings, folks, and indeed, welcome to Mac Geek Gab, the show where you send in quick tips like that, questions, your cool stuff found. We share your quick tips, as we've done. We share cool stuff found. We share your questions, and we also try to answer them. Sometimes we even have questions of our own. We string it all together into an agenda that kind of makes sense and really is engineered to keep us all engaged so that we each learn at least 5 new things every single time we get together. Sponsors for this episode include BB Edit from barebones.com, one of my favorite apps that's always running on my Mac, and Private Internet Access VPN, where at piavpn.com/MGG, you can save like 83% off your VPN service plus 4 free months. You actually get a better deal than I did, and it's the VPN I pay for. We'll talk more in depth about each of those in a little bit. For now, here in Durham, New Hampshire, I'm Dave Hamilton.
And here in Lee, New Hampshire, it's Pilot Pete. And listeners, I want to tell you something. That spirit level on the iPhone, I've known about it for weeks, months, however, I have no idea. You have things like that you know about too, and it just doesn't even occur to you to share them with us. You know what you should do? Share them with us. Write to us at feedback at macgeekgab.com.
Wait, did you say feedback at macgeekgab.com?
That's what I said, Dave. You heard me the first time. Feedback at macgeekgab.
Easy for us both to say.
New lips, apparently, for both of us. Feedback at macgeekgab.com. Oh, dear God, help us.
Oh, man. It has been a show already. This might have been certainly one of, if not the longest pre-show we've ever had, sorting out a technical issue that was exacerbated, at least on my part. It was a tech issue that neither one of us caused, at least on our local computers, with audio. But I had a weird audio issue happening before we even got together today, Pete.
Yeah.
And so that was what led me down a bit of a wild goose chase of like, oh, well, it must be related to this. And it turns out, nope, it's totally different. It's totally
Absolutely different. But all the folks that were watching on YouTube got to, and Discord, got to watch paint dry.
I don't know. They got to see the troubleshooting process in action.
It actually helped.
Pete.
They were able to tell us whether or not they were hearing that clicking and popping that was ruining our day.
Our audio. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's fascinating. Fascinating. So, yeah, if you join the calendar at macgeekgab.com/calendar, because that's what it is, then you'll see in your calendar, because it's the same one we use, when we're going to be recording the show, and you can join our Discord or watch live on YouTube or Facebook. And so, yeah. And if there's other places you'd like to watch live, tell us, and we'll stream to there too. We stream to LinkedIn as well. And there's a small subsection that, yeah. All right, back to quick tips, Pete. You got something for me?
Yeah, so Keith wrote in, and this is a long one, so I'm going to truncate it some, but he writes in, he said, hey guys, I have a tale of a lost, then found iPhone. Recently, I was on my way to work on public transit here in Ottawa, listening to podcasts on my way to work while playing some Pokemon Go on my personal phone. I got off the bus and into the LRT station when my podcast, yes, coincidentally, it was the Mac Geek Gab, stopped playing. I went to reach for my work phone and immediately realized it had gone out of Bluetooth range and I'd left it on the bus.
Uh-oh.
Ouch, right? Yeah. Says I turned on lost mode with my personal number and proceeded to call the transit company to see if they could help. When I got to the office, I checked Find My and discovered something. First, it showed my iPhone was seeming in the downtown core, not back on the bus route. Maybe someone found it and brought it with them. I quickly changed the message to indicate that I was available to meet downtown. Tip is here. Secondly, I noticed that Find My shows the route the lost device is taking from the time I turned on lost mode. And I followed anxiously and saw that it just kept going away. Then I realized that the bus driver had changed routes and the phone was still on the bus. Maybe someone had given it to him to keep. A while later, it was on the move again on a different route. And eventually, though, it started back towards the downtown core. I once again figured out the route and determined that he would eventually stop a block away from where I was working. The bus pulled up. I saw that he had changed the sign, indicating he was probably at the end of his shift. So I acted quickly and ran up and asked if he had run my route earlier and asked if someone had turned in the phone. And he stared at me oddly, not wanting to let me on. I told him to wait a second. I turned off the lost mode, pinged my phone, and he said, oh, I hear it. And he let me go get it. It had fallen between the seat and the side of the bus, so you had to be looking for it. Anyways, the useful feature was that I wasn't aware of that it appears to work with AirTags as well. So once he put it in the lost mode, he could still see the route that it was taking.
So I think there are like about 14 quick tips in here, but the big takeaway for me is that Keith knew about he didn't know. The one that was new to Keith is the one he wrote us about, right?
Yeah,
this is to your point before, all the things that we already know about, we don't think to share, right? Yeah. But so the new one to Keith was that it showed him the route, and that's cool. But what was even more important, or equally important, is that Keith knew how to use all of this tech. He knew it existed. He knew that in order to show the bus driver, for example, that the phone was still on the bus, that he had to turn off lost mode in order to ping the phone. Well, if he didn't know that it was possible to ping the phone, and if he didn't know that you had to turn off lost mode, because I didn't know that until now, because I've never been in that scenario, like, it's the awareness of these features that made that story end in success, right?
Absolutely.
And there were some new things Keith learned during the process, and thank you for sharing those with us. But the entire process really speaks to a big part of what value I think this show brings, certainly to me, and I think to a lot of you, is hearing a story like this. My iPhone currently is not stuck on a bus somewhere, right? It's right here. I have it right here in my hand. Like, I shouldn't be holding it while we're doing the show, but it's here. However, this story is going to, swim around in the back of my brain. And then the day that I do leave my iPhone on a bus somewhere and in a panic moment need to convince a bus driver to open the door for me or whatever my analog of that might be, I know what to do because we've talked about it on the show. So yes, feedback at macgeekgab.com. Please send in your stuff. It really, this is why we do what we do and the value that I think we all get out of it, or at least one of the values that we get out of it. Yeah. All right. Next up is rnDoug from our Discord shares just an FYI in case anyone else runs into this. After updating to Sonoma, all of the windows would go off to the sides if I left clicked the desktop. So just a normal click on the desktop would scatter all of his windows off to the side. The cause of this was a setting under Stage Manager that somehow became enabled after the update. You can find it in the System Settings app, Desktop and Dock, and then Desktop and Stage Manager, and then click Wallpaper to reveal Desktop. Change from always to only in Stage Manager. That's interesting. Yeah. And he says, for what it's worth, I've never used Stage Manager on this computer. So
yeah.
Good tip.
Yeah, that is good. I'm not a stage manager user. I guess that works. Obviously people have different workflows and that sort of thing works well for them. That's something important to know because that would be particularly frustrating, right?
Right.
I don't want my windows back. Where'd they go?
Another frustrating thing, and this might also fall into the PSA category, comes from listener Scott, who says, if anyone has iOS 17 and has custom ringtones, don't look at them or change them or do anything with them in settings, as they will go away if you do. When he wrote this in earlier this week, he was on 17.0.1. No 17.0.3 just came out just before we recorded this episode. He says 17.01 doesn't or didn't recognize custom ringtones that are actually loaded on the phone. If you have one set and have not looked at it in settings, it will work just fine until you look. So this is like Schrödinger's ringtone, because when you look at it, it messes up the experiment, right? But in fact, Scott, I need to give you credit for this. Great minds think alike. His next sentence is, it's Heisenberg's bug. So there you go. Yep, it's Heisenberg's ringtone. Yeah, sure. Either one. Once you look, it will now be set to vibrate only or default, depending on where you look at it. And he found a Reddit post that talks about this, and this this user on Reddit tested it, that there is a way to bring them back, and it is quite an involved process. So I will leave that as an exercise for the listener. But there is a solution. Look in macgeekgab.com for the show notes for 1003, or you can go directly to them at mgg.fm/1003. So thank you for that, Scott. Good heads up. Yep. Don't want to break that. Let's see. Go ahead. Do you have something on that? Or
that just mentioning Schrödinger is always the one that brings me to ask the question: Did Schrödinger's cat get killed with Occam's razor? I'm just asking for a friend.
Pete. I appreciate that. It's going to be one of these shows.
Oh, it already is.
Sorry, not sorry. Yeah, it just is. Right. It's just how it is today. Yeah.
You have tuned into the Smart Aleck Geek Gab.
Yeah. Well, it's been a punchy morning. That's for sure. Stephen shares a sort of the quick tip. I think the quick tip that might have started them all, or at least started us calling them.
Essential quick tip.
It's an essential quick tip. It is definitely a revisited quick tip. Yeah. We go through this about once or twice a year, but what Stephen shares is he says, and I'll share it as he wrote it. I know many of us know this because we've talked about it on the show. He says, there is a tip that works for both iPhone and iPad. To quickly move around in a text box, push down or hold down on the space bar on the virtual keyboard, and after a moment of keeping your finger down, it turns into a trackpad where you can move the cursor anywhere within that text block. He says this is great when working on emails and other long documents. Boy, howdy, I couldn't agree more. This is that quick tip where if you show this to someone who has not seen it before, they will never forget you and will look at you like you just made fire for the first time for them. And I know that there are some listeners out there for whom you're hearing this for the first time. So the long and short of it is, in a text edit field, when you have the keyboard up, hold down the space bar, just push on the space bar for half a second.
When all the keys go blank, yeah.
Exactly. The letters will go blank, and then you can just drag around like your keyboard is a trackpad and watch what happens. The cursor just moves. It's amazing.
Works on iPad OS too.
Yep.
It's awesome.
Yep. So thank you for that, Stephen. It's it is a good one, and I am happy to revisit it as often as we do because I use it constantly, and I would hate for anyone to go too long without knowing about it. Martin brings us our next one and says, you were talking recently about tags inside notes, or tags in general, in notes being one of the places. Take note, tags can cause problems with different, especially older versions of macOS. If someone is using Catalina, and a tag is placed in a note on something later, the Catalina machine will not see that note until the tag is removed. So syncing for these things, syncing something that's using new features sometimes excludes it from appearing on the machine with old features. So yeah, thank you for, if you're having trouble with a tag syncing to a machine that's stuck on Catalina or even older, check to see if it's got a tag in there. So yeah, thank you for
That's just bizarre.
Yep.
That shouldn't happen. I
mean, we saw it with calendars when they changed and added features to calendar. Like we say it on the show often. Syncing is difficult. Syncing is hard, and you have to make. At some point, you've got to make compromises.
Makes it harder.
Yeah. Well, you're syncing data that doesn't exist, and so here's the question, right? Like if the Catalina Mac has no way of accounting for these tags, then how is it if you make an edit to that? Like, so let's say the Catalina user makes an edit to that note that should then sync back to the other Macs. Well, what's going to happen to that tag? It's gone. Right? Yeah. Like it's, it can't send it back. Or if it could, like, what would that mean? Yeah.
Right. And if you're using smart folders, now you've got a real mess on your hands.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Assuming you're counting on the tag to make that smart folder work.
Correct. So, Correct. Yeah, really good point. Yep. All right. We're plowing through these. I love it. Listener Rob brings us our next one. He looked at his iPhone recently. He says, I'd done this a while back and forgot about it until Apple showed me again in the iPhone event that the iPhone's phone supports voice isolation for phone calls. And he says this is not a new feature in iOS 17 or even for iPhone 15, but he said, so I'm not sure why they chose to highlight it or showcase it in the keynote, but thankfully he says they did. It reminded me of it. The problem, he says, is enabling it can only be done during an active phone call. And so when you're in an active phone call, go to Control Center, select mic mode up in the top right, and then select your option. You have options for standard, voice isolation, or wide spectrum. Whatever you choose will be the setting for future calls until you change it. But you just have to remember that you can't change it during, you can only change it during a call. You can't change it. Like now would be the time I'd want to change it, not when I'm trying to talk to somebody on the phone.
Right. Wait, I can't hear you. Hang on while I'm playing with my settings.
Or you're having trouble hearing me. It's not so much about them. It's not about their audio.
Right, but you're saying I can't hear you because the phone's away from my ear while I play with my settings.
I try to make it better for you. Yeah, it's a janky user experience. I'm surprised if someone. I was going to say I'm surprised that Apple has not given us a way somewhere in settings or wherever to adjust this.
Yeah,
maybe they have.
Oh, and maybe in the phone app settings somewhere.
Or somewhere else. There's sound settings now. So if you know of a way, of course, feedback at macgeekgab.com because we want to know.
So Dave, forgive me if I mentioned this last week. I may have or I may not have, but I'm old, so my memory fails me. But I use the AirPods frequently for noise reduction. But the problem that I had them set up, when I try to have a conversation, it kills the noise reduction. And so that's another setting that you can go into your AirPods and turn off it's called the transparency mode, I believe.
Yes. Right.
And voice sensitivity or something like that. So when you start talking, it takes down what you're listening to, even if you're listening to nothing, it turns it into the transparency mode, which completely obliterates or obviates the noise reduction function.
Yeah, but that's not true when you're on a phone call. That's
correct.
Only true in person. I just wanted to share because we were just talking about phone calls, so I wanted to make sure we were articulating that it's it knows when you're on a phone call not to take your act
outside
of talking
environment.
as an impact to your noise cancellation settings. But yes, otherwise, when you start talking, it assumes that you want to hear what other people say. I don't know why Apple would think that. What makes them think that just because I'm talking, I want to hear what they have to say?
What anyone else has to say. That's right.
I mean, they know me.
Come on, Apple.
Yeah, podcasting for over 18 years about Apple. Like, you'd think they would know this about me.
Right on.
One last one here in the quick tips section for this week.
Another brilliant one.
This is super brilliant. Gavin asks, hey, you ever been trying to clean your iPhone screen but are frustrated that the screen keeps waking up, preventing you from seeing all the dirty marks in that reflection that you get on a dark screen? He says, and you don't want to turn, he says you could go into settings and turn off the raise to wake setting, or you could power off your phone, but that's annoying to just wipe down your screen. That makes it take like way longer. He says, here's the trick. Lock your phone so that it's not like awake and in an app, and then turn it upside down, and you can wipe the screen all you want and it won't wake up. But if it's right side up with the screen facing up, it immediately will wake up when you start touching the screen. It's brilliant. So all you got to do is wipe your phone off with the screen facing downward and not the screen facing upward, and everything is golden. So thanks for that one, Gavin. Thanks for everybody for all your quick tips today. This is I love this section of the show. All right. Hey, did you know that over 30 million people have signed up for our next sponsor? Did you know who our next sponsor is? Did you guess it? It's Private Internet Access, or PIA. PIA is the VPN that I use here. I've paid for it. I am a happy customer, and it's because PIA understands privacy, and they take privacy seriously. Not only does PIA hide your IP address, it encrypts your entire connection. And this then protects my internet activity and yours from everyone, right? Your internet service provider, either at home or when you're out and about, right? Network admins when you're out and about at like coffee shops and hotels. You don't know who has access to the stuff that's seen on those networks, or really any hackers that are out there just kind of itching to steal things. PIA is also the world's transparent VPN. They never record or store user data. Never record nor store user data. This is a big deal. And their no logs policy has even been verified in court. Plus, you also get endless entertainment options. Not only does PIA work with all the major streaming services, but it's one of the few VPNs that supports P2P file sharing too. I know. So you can download just about anything you want and nobody needs to know. You can connect to over 83 countries using their world-class servers. And there's a server for every single U.S. state, so you can kind of narrow it down and yet still be separate from where you actually are. You got to check this out. I love it, and I really think you're going to love it too. Right now, go to piavpn.com/MGG to get a whopping 83% off your VPN service. You're going to get a better deal than I did. Plus, you get 4 free months with a 2-year plan. It comes out to just over $2 a month, and there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. That's piavpn.com/MGG for 83% off private internet access. piavpn.com/MGG. And our thanks to PIA for sponsoring this episode. Next up is BBEdit. And look, BBEdit, it's one of my favorite apps. If you've listened to this show for any length of time, you know it's running on my Mac. How do you know that? Because it's always running on my Mac. It's part of my Start My Day script, and it's because I use it for all kinds of things. Yes, when I'm in nerdy programmer mode, I use it to do all of my coding because I love the way that it just works and gets out of my way. But it also just kind of sits there and ever so slightly highlights the code just on the screen, doesn't change the disk, highlights my code in a way that allows me to see where functions begin and end, where variables are. It's so smart. And speaking of variables, when I'm going to like type a variable, it knows the names of the variables in that project and will suggest them for me as soon as I type like the variable delimiter, like a $sign or, whatever it is in that language. It's really cool. But it does more than that too. And I use it for simple stuff all the time because it is a text editor, right? So I get to use it for text. Sometimes I'll copy text from a website and then go to paste it into an email. And it's like trying to import formatting from the website and screws it all up. No. I paste it into BB-Edit. That strips out all the formatting because BB-Edit's a text editor. Then I can copy from there and put it in. I can use it to count the number of words in anything, a document or whatever it is that I open up. And I can use it to compare documents, which is a really valuable thing. I'm using all kinds of things in BB-Edit all the time, and I think you will too. You've got to go check it out. Go to barebones.com. And you can download a 30-day eval, which you can test out all the features. And then after 30 days, some of the features are paid only, and a lot of them remain free. Check it out. Figure out what features you need. Buy it if you need those features. My guess is you're probably going to want to buy it anyway because it's great software and you'll support it. Again, barebones.com. And our thanks to BB-Edit and the team at Barebones for sponsoring this episode.
So Dan Thurston writes in with our next quick tip. I realized that if you double tap with 2 fingers on an app in the dock of a Mac, and I'm assuming that's a trackpad because you can't do it on the screen of most Macs, laptops, it brings up all of the available windows of that particular app or program. Probably a well-known thing, but to most, but not to me. And that was our point earlier. A lot of things we just know and understand and assume everybody else knows it too, but that's why we share it here. So yeah, double tap on the window on the icon in the dock, and you get to see what windows are available to you. Brilliant.
I like that one. Yeah. That's a good one. Yeah, nice bonus little quick tip. Let's go into questions because we got a bunch of questions this week, Pete. So you want to take us to GBurlie? What's your question?
Which one do we want to start with? You already said it. So
GBurlie wrote in, I think, is that's the one. Yeah.
So this is I purchased. GBurlie writes, I purchased a Mac Mini M2 and got the base SSD size internally. Now I need help choosing the best external SSD option. I'd like for this external SSD to be potentially my boot drive. I'm considering a 2 terabyte SSD, and I want to keep my overall cost under $250. I've seen some YouTube videos where people are using SSD enclosures that paired with some SSD drive that can achieve read and write speeds that equal or surpass the drive built into the Mac into the Mac Mini. Any help out there on the suggestions for the hardware to achieve my goal? And Dave, you answered this.
Yeah, so my gut, because you're going to be booting from this, my gut would say to make this a truly Thunderbolt SSD, right? I mean, you've got Thunderbolt ports. You could go with a 10 gig USB SSD, and they certainly exist and are less expensive because you're not paying the Thunderbolt tax, but you're also not getting the speed that you can get with a Thunderbolt connected drive. And again, because it's your boot disk, it's going to be using it for swap as well. I think you're going to want Thunderbolt. That's what I would do. And so with that, I would go with the OWC Envoy Pro FX. A 2 terabyte is $279, so $279.99. So a little bit outside of your $250, but you're gonna get that that Thunderbolt speed. If you don't want to go that far and you do want to keep it under under $250, for $136, you can get the Samsung T7 SSD. And that one is, it's USB. I think they say it's USB 3.2 is what we call that, but it's a 10 gig drive. I've got one of these, 2 terabytes in storage, 10 gigs in speed. So it's going to be fat. You may not notice a difference between this and Thunderbolt. Again, I would go with Thunderbolt, but the difference between 136 and 279 is, well, it's darn near double, isn't it, Pete?
Yeah.
So it's almost exactly.
It's more than double, actually, but just almost exactly. Yeah.
Almost exactly. Yeah, exactly. So that's where I would lean for it is that GBurlie. I think that's the I think that's the way to go.
And boy, that's a nice little machine.
Yeah.
These minis.
Yeah.
They're killer machines.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I looked at the Mini I assumed that I would be buying a mini when the iMac here in the studio, when the screen died, you know, and it was like, well, and then as I started looking at pricing, it was like, well, I can get this M1 Studio on refurb for less, and it's more juice, less money, or about the same money, and then actually, you know, as I mentioned, I wound up getting a new one for the refurb price, so that was even better. But
and my mini, just to share it with folks, I run it in the basement. I run it headless, and it's my Plex server. I run channels DVR on it. It's just a nice little piece of gear that I can connect to from anywhere in the world.
Yep.
And thank you, Tailscale.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. I know, man. Tailscale makes life way easier. While we're on the subject of SSDs and all of that, listener Dick wrote in and says, I'm struggling with cabling between Thunderbolt 4, Thunderbolt 3, and USB-C. He says, I have the same M2 Mini, and I have it plugged in to my OWC Thunderbolt 3 dock after having too many problems trying to keep my external SSDs, 2 of them, up and running using USB hubs, both powered and unpowered. He says, I have one SSD plugged into the empty Thunderbolt port on the dock, and I would like to connect another using a Thunderbolt cable with USB to plug into one of the USB 3.1 ports, but I'm not sure if I need a different cable with the 2 ends or if I can use an adapter to fit the USB port. And so OWC's Thunderbolt 3 dock, the current iteration, has 2 Thunderbolt ports, one, and he confirmed this by way of asking his question, one that goes upstream to the computer, one that goes downstream to the, in his case, to his SSD, right? And it could be a Thunderbolt capable SSD, a Thunderbolt capable SSD. I'm not sure. You didn't mention, Dick, whether your SSDs were Thunderbolt or USB, and you may not have known, you may not, until this moment in time, realize that there was a difference. It's good if you don't know by looking at them, you might see the little Thunderbolt logo. If you don't see that, it's probably not Thunderbolt, but there's no guarantee. So, look up the model number online to figure that out, because that Thunderbolt 3 dock that you've got from OWC has 2 Thunderbolt ports and 6 USB ports. There are 2 types of them, though. There are 5 USB-A ports, 4 on the back and 1 on the front. And each of those runs at 5 gigabits per second. And then on the front, I believe it's on the front, there is also a USB-C port that runs USB 10 gigabit USB. And so it would be worth looking and knowing, are your SSDs, what is their maximum speed? Because if the maximum speed of your SSD is 5 gigabits, then certainly you could get a cable that connects from USB-A to USB-C. Make sure it is a USB 3.1 capable cable. Otherwise, it might dumb the connection down to USB 2, which is like, 480 megabits or about half a gigabit-ish. And you don't want that. But if it is a 10 gigabit, then you would need to plug that in to, again, with a USB 3.1 capable cable into the USB-C port on the front so that you get full speeds, and then it would be a C-to-C cable. But again, as we've talked about on the show, not all cables with the same ends are the same, right? They're not all made equal. You can have a C-to-C cable like the one that Apple ships you with your iPhone that will only support USB 2. It'll support 100 watts of charging if you want, but only supports USB 2 speeds. So you got to be really aware of the speeds of the cables and all of that stuff. So the fact that you are confused, Dick, you're not alone. It gets very confusing.
Amen.
So, yeah.
Because, standards and protocols, who needs them?
Yeah, who needs them? Yeah, exactly. Well, we have them. They're just not very good at articulating that in the cable.
Labeling. Like you said, you may or may not have a Thunderbolt icon on the cable.
Right.
And it's a Thunderbolt cable. But,
and as we found recently during doing all the tests that I did, a cable that is USB 4 capable will work as a Thunderbolt cable as well.
Right.
full speeds, 40 gigabits a second, passing 100 watts of power. I have a USB 4 cable that passes 240 watts of power and does, full Thunderbolt capability, but it doesn't say Thunderbolt on it. And I only paid $30 for it instead of paying $60 because, that's how that works.
Oh, well, you got to get a link to that up in there.
It is in there. I will link to it, but I will also link to the episode where we recently talked about that. Because that I think that conversation was important.
That's probably a better place.
You're going to want to you want to listen to that segment of that show, and I forget what number episode it was. It was sometime in the last 10 episodes or so, but I'll find it.
Okay.
And I'll put that link in there so that you can really not just go buy that one cable, although in the end that's probably what you're going to do, but you're going to know why you're going to buy it, which I think is important. Moving on to our next question, Gray writes in and says, my 2017 iMac running Ventura 1352 will no longer pair with a Bluetooth keyboard or trackpad. Both input devices are fully charged and are usable when connected with a USB cable. I have tried the sophisticated troubleshooting option of turning the device off and then on, but I haven't had much luck in further troubleshooting. Any ideas, Pete?
I got no idea. New computer, Gray. All right, just kidding. I came up with a bunch of ideas, and actually a pretty long email detailed back to Gray, and I will read the highlight points here of things that you would want to do. Probably not likely, but check for interference. If you're sitting there with your keyboard next to your computer, the likelihood of Bluetooth frequency interference is going to be pretty low, but I reference back to the fact that we had an LED light bulb interfering with the ability for your garage door opener to work on a recent episode, and that's a whole nother question.
Well, and we know that some USB 3 hard drives will interfere with the Bluetooth connections on a Mac, so it's possible.
Possible. Yeah. Not likely, but possible. Yeah.
I mean, I think it would pair, but not be as usable. It would be intermittently usable, but I think you'd get it to pair. So, yeah. Yeah.
So, the next suggestion I have is reset your Bluetooth module. So, hold down the Shift option and click on the Bluetooth icon in the macOS menu bar. You should see a debug option in the drop down. Select that and click the reset the Bluetooth module, and then restart your Mac. This is kind of extreme, but delete all your Bluetooth preferences. They're easy to get back. So, navigate to Finder, press Command-Shift-G, bring up the Go to folder, type in library preferences and hit enter, and find com.apple.bluetooth.plist, move it to the trash and restart your Mac and get them back. And I think he said this was an older Mac, an Intel
2017.
Mac. So,
it's Intel, yeah.
So then try resetting the iMac's PRAM and VRAM.
Yeah, and the SMC.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, yeah, I don't have the SMC in there.
No, because when it sounds like hardware, sometimes it's not hardware, it's the SMC, right?
System management controller,
Yeah.
So try those. Remove and repair devices. Kind of sounds like you did that with the power off and power back on, but removing them from your Bluetooth, you're doing that above with your Bluetooth preferences plist by eliminating that, but that may help. I got this one when I called Mac over my syncing issue. Just update the operating system. Make sure you're up to date, and sometimes that can fix Bluetooth issues.
Sure.
That's kind of a lazy one.
I agree. He was already up to date. The likelihood, that's not likely, but it's something to think about. Sure.
Safe mode. Try booting your Mac into the safe mode by holding down the Shift key during the startup, and it'll only load the essential software and such, and see if you get your Bluetooth issues there. External interference. We kind of talked about that already. So let's see. The next one was, test on another user account. And again, as I stated before, on my machine, I have my name is my one account. My other account is shooter, as in troubleshooter. So
I like that.
Yeah.
That's better than test, which is an obvious username. So, and listen, whatever you do, if you create that test user, make it a password you can remember, but don't make it test. And I swear my test user accounts passwords are not test. I swear. Please don't check that for me, though.
Right, exactly. And then I would give that troubleshooting account admin privileges.
That's why you don't want to make it test. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You want full admin privileges on that account because you may need, like, what a lot of the things you shared
to recover other information. Yeah.
And a lot of the things you shared are, I mean, they're good troubleshooting for this problem, but they are also simply good general troubleshooting steps. And there may be a time when you need to use that test user account because you can't log into your main user account. You know, there might be some startup item or something getting in the way that's causing a crash. And so now you need to go and like touch it from the other side. And so it needs to have admin privileges, but you don't want to make the password test. So, yeah.
Gee, maybe test exclamation point? I don't know. Just
sure.
I know. Make it password.
Oh, there you go.
Or monkey.
Yeah, monkey. There you go. Yeah.
And finally, a hardware check. If all those other steps above that I've just talked about don't work for you, then consider taking it into to the Mac Genius Bar and have them troubleshoot it and see if there's something wrong with it there. But
it sounds. I mean, so I would. The things I would add to this are try the keyboard and mouse trackpad, whatever it is, on another Mac. Now, the fact that it's two devices which simultaneously stopped working in this one specific way tells me it's probably not either one of the devices, right? But testing them on another Mac, especially if it's only one, if you only had, say, a Bluetooth keyboard and a wired mouse or vice versa, or, something, testing on another Mac just to confirm, isolate, like that's honoring the troubleshooting process. So certainly you doing that wouldn't be a bad thing, but I think we know what you're going to find, that the keyboard and the trackpad work just fine over Bluetooth with any device except this one. And that tells me you've got a Bluetooth problem. If, the software test, the SMC reset, all of that doesn't solve it, for less than $15, you can buy a USB-A Bluetooth adapter to plug in to your Mac. And I've tested these on a lot of different Macs. TP-Link makes one, but they are like, so do brands who have names you've never even heard of. Look on Amazon for a Bluetooth, receiver, dongle, whatever you want to call it. You can upgrade yourself to Bluetooth 5 by doing this. And more often than not, you just plug it in and the Mac recognizes it as your Bluetooth receiver. That may be the simplest answer. I had a Mac years ago where the Bluetooth chip went kaput. And so I spent $13 and bought one of these things and plugged it in, and I never even thought about it again. Like, nice. I was like, oh yeah, my Mac has Bluetooth now. Right. It just worked. So
what about, so I'm going to hit you with a stump dummy question then real quickly,
sure.
Dave. So Bluetooth 5, I didn't realize we were up to the 5th protocol.
Yep.
Do you recall some of the features that have been added? Is it just speed? Is it better encryption?
Let's look here. I don't know the answer to this off the top of my head.
Right.
But
Brian Monroe when you need him.
Yep. Bluetooth 5 is faster in theory than Bluetooth 4 was.
Okay.
Bluetooth 4 maxed out at either 1 megabits per second or 25 if you were using enhanced data rate. Bluetooth 5 doubles that to 2 on Bluetooth LE and 50 on enhanced data rate. The range also...
Holy smokes, the range.
Correct. It goes
You got to be in the same county, I guess, but that's about it.
Yeah, it goes from 200 feet to 800 feet. Again, real best sort of best case conditions. Power requirements are lower with Bluetooth 5. And so for what you're doing, it doesn't matter whether you have probably Bluetooth 3 would be enough for your keyboards and all of that stuff. But if you're going to bother to buy a Bluetooth adapter, no reason not to make it a Bluetooth 5, so yeah.
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 I'll tell you what, though, the problem with that is now it escapes me the gent's name that we just read about the bus excursion. It's going to take them a lot longer
Oh,
to realize.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Keith, yeah. Your phone's going to make it halfway across town before you realize it's not in range anymore.
That's fair. Well, but I mean, it can look at signal strength. It would be interesting to see if Apple is just using a binary sort of can you see it or not versus, something more like, hey, this is far away from you now, because it can know those things. So, yeah, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, in fact, what is fascinating to me is the technology on keys. Yeah. For automobiles. Like if you leave the key on the roof of your car, it won't start.
Right.
But if you bring it in the cabin, it'll start. How do it know?
I know. It's not Bluetooth. That's just RF. No. But even still, how
it's different? Yeah.
But how does it?
That is fascinating.
I wonder if it's that's a really good question. I wonder if there are multiple sensors in the cabin, and it is triangulating to see whether the key is not just nearby, but where nearby. Because if you put 3 sensors in there. I think 3 would be enough. 4 would certainly be enough to give you exactly like which direction is it, and therefore is it in the cabin. That's somebody knows. Let us know in the chat at macgeekgab.com/discord or feedback at macgeekgab.com.
But you're raising the level of complexity like crazy.
Yeah, but in a car, you'd really want to know.
Absolutely. You don't want that key on the roof of the car.
No.
Or your hosed.
Your hosed. Yeah, that's the nice word for it. So, yeah, exactly. Yep. Interesting. Oh.
So I wonder how we wandered down this rabbit hole. Sorry.
I don't know. It's fine. Gary brings up an interesting question. He was talking about NameDrop. And which is the new feature in iOS 17, where you can, get your phone close to somebody else's, and then it'll ask if you want to share your contact information and that sort of thing, which is great. But what if you don't want to share all of the details in your contact record? Because you might have lots of stuff in there that you want to have for you in your contact record, but are not the kinds of things you want to share. And so Gary was saying, maybe you need to create a minimal contact record, but of course, then you might not get all the benefits that you want. Like it's not going to see your contacts for various, services like messages and things like that. So here is the thing that many of us don't know about contacts. You can do this on your iPhone. You can also do it on your Mac. But on your iPhone, if you open contacts and you go to My Card, which is the one listed at the very top, scroll all the way to the bottom of your card and tap the Share Contact option. It's not going to start sharing it yet. The first thing it's going to do is present you with all the fields that are in your contacts record, your contact record, and it's going to give you checkboxes next to everyone. All you need to do is make sure the checkboxes are on for the fields you want to share and off for the fields you don't want to share, and then click Done. And then at that point, it brings up the share sheet to share your contact record. It'll do this every time that you share your contact on your iPhone, but it will remember what you chose the previous time. And near as I can tell, NameDrop inherits that setting. So you can be selective with what you share with NameDrop.
Yeah, that's nice. That's a nice feature because I used to have to go. I think he had originally said, do I need to create a duplicate with less information?
Right.
It's like, the NameDrop choosing fields is awesome.
Yep. Yep. So you get to pick, and you're good to go. So, yep. Listener Richard has another one of these sort of curiosity questions. Richard sent us a screenshot of his iPhone, which had a dialogue over the top that said, "Diagnostics are in flight. Perform the following. Send feedback. Ignore." And he said, what the heck does diagnostics in flight mean? And we have an answer for you. This is part of the share your diagnostics, for lack of a better term, share your app logs and activity with developers, right? And so you can share analytics with developers when an app has a crash or at other times to help them, right? And Apple does confirm that that this is in fact a shared anonymously, but it doesn't. Yeah, you may choose to turn this off, and certainly you can, and yeah, there you go. So it's settings and privacy. And then you go to diagnostics and usage, and you can choose how you want to do that. So, yeah. Oh, sorry, not diagnostics and usage, analytics or analytics and improvements. I think. How is it in iOS 17? It's let's see, settings, privacy, and security, and then we scroll down to analytics and improvements, and then you get to choose how you share all of this stuff with Apple and also other developers. So yeah, you get the share with app developers. So if you turn that off, then you won't. Then your diagnostics will never be in flight.
Right.
So, yep.
Well, unless you're actually in flight, but that's
different, Pete. Yeah,
right.
This has nothing to do with airplane mode. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, yep.
Yeah. So Barb wrote in with a crazy problem.
Yeah.
She her junk mail said it's going into her grocery ads. I'm assuming she has a folder named grocery ads. All her junk mail started going in there. And she's trying to look for any suggestions. Why or how did my junk mail start going to the wrong folder?
Yeah, I can only guess as to why this is happening, but when you set mail up, you can go in. When you set an account up in Mail, you can go in and specify which mailboxes are used for things like the archive or the sent box or the trash or the junk mailbox. And you can change these. If you go into Mail on your Mac, you go into accounts or settings first, then to accounts, pick the account in question. And then there's 3 tabs across the top. The middle one says mailbox behaviors. That's where you set all this stuff up. Go and look there to see if the junk mailbox is set to grocery ads. If it is, change it to something like the junk mailbox. And then hopefully that's where these things will go. You can do this on your iPhone as well. It's also in settings. You go into settings and Mail. And then once you get that up in Mail, you go into accounts. Again, choose the account in question. And from there, you can tap. It's a little bizarre. You tap on the account name, which is usually just your name. Then you go to advanced, and there you get to see these same list of mailbox behaviors, and you can choose. So hopefully, as you peruse this setting on all of your devices, on one of them, you will find it set that it's putting junk in the grocery ads, and it will change it. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The weird thing is when that stuff sort of starts happening, when you have no recollection, you haven't been playing around in your mail settings, but every now and then, some stray Tron gets swapped out.
Yep.
And,
for sure. I got that iPhone 15 Pro, Pete, and I've been using it.
So how did you drop it or what? What happened?
So yes, I did drop it.
How did I know that? Because you say in the notes that the titanium is soft.
The titanium is soft, Pete. So I decided, because this is titanium, and Apple talked about how strong the titanium is and how great it feels in your hand and all that. Yeah. I'm like, well, I'll forego a case on this phone. So as soon as I got it, I put a tempered glass screen protector on the front, because I still feel like I need to do that. I don't know if I need to do it or not, but I'm fine with it. So I did that the moment I took it out of the box and pulled their little protective thing off, put the tempered glass on there, and that was it. I used my MagSafe accessories. I popped a little MagSafe pop socket on there because I don't have I didn't have a whatchamacallit, the Snap case, the Snap 3 Pro or whatever. And so it was fine. Like, I could use my wallet. I could use that. Great. Second day I had it, I was walking across the driveway. The phone hopped out of my hip pocket, landed on the driveway. I thought, oh, man. Okay, great. So I pick it up. I can tell you where it landed. It landed on the corner of the phone, because there's a little nick now in the titanium where it landed on my driveway from a 3-foot drop out of my pocket. And it's like, well, guys, WTF? Like, it's titanium. You told us not to use it with a case. Now, since then, of course, Apple has said, oh, yeah, by the way, the titanium will discolor if you use it without a case. The titanium will blah, blah, blah. It's soft titanium is soft, folks. I wonder if it's because Apple recycled this titanium 37 times and maybe it lost some of its tensile strength.
There you go. I mean, that's supposed to be a very hard metal. That's why they make jet engines out of it, for goodness sake.
It turns out that it's more about being lightweight, which definitely the 15 Pro, like I noticed that as soon as I got it. But it's more about it being lightweight than it is about being strong. Steel is stronger than titanium based on the bits of research that I've done. So now my phone is in a clear spec case, so I can admire the titanium color that I bought, but not risk damaging.
Don't let that horse back in the barn, Dave.
It's such a minor little nick, but it was just like, guys, like, come on, man. Like,
I had a heartbreaker this week too. I actually dropped my MacBook Pro. About 3 feet. It hit the corner. Nice big dent shaved up on the corner. I actually wound up taking it was jagged. I wound up taking a hasp and filing down that corner a little bit. Now it's shiny.
Yeah.
But yeah, it did hit the tile and it dented. Now, the beauty is, right, with SSDs, that doesn't seem to be an issue anymore.
Wow.
But unfortunately, it didn't crack the screen or having to do it there. And it did. Yep. It would have been worse, I think, had I not had my clear plastic protective case on it.
Right.
But it hit hard on the tile. Like, oh, man, it's heartbreaking to have an otherwise pristine machine get it to, it's the first scratch on your new car, right?
Oh, yeah.
The first door ding.
That sucks. Yeah. Absolutely. Yep.
What are you going to do?
So, I mean, I'm going to put a case on it like I always have, and I'm not going to worry about it. But it's just like, guys, like, come on. Don't tell us one thing and then, like, it's a bummer.
Yeah.
I want to take a minute, Pete. We have some cool stuff found to go through.
Yeah.
And before we do that, I want to take a minute and thank everybody who is a premium subscriber and whose contributions came in during the past week here. I say it every week, and I'm right. At least I try to say it every week. This show, the way this show survives is by a mix of a lot of different revenue streams. Our sponsors are certainly a part of it, and you, our premium subscribers, are also a part of it. This is absolutely an optional program. It is here. It was created because you asked us to create it. You asked us for ways to get to support us directly, and so we created this. Premium listeners get, in addition to the warm, fuzzy feeling of supporting one of your favorite podcasts, is you also get access to a priority email address, which is premium@macgeekgab.com. And if you are, premium is a generalized term. Yes, it includes those of you whose names we're about to read that have submitted to us directly. It also includes anyone who is a subscriber on Apple Podcasts. We don't get to know your name. So we also don't get all of your money. Apple keeps 30% of it, but we also, we understand the convenience factor there. So whatever way works for you works for us. It's totally fine, but we just don't get any visibility into that whatsoever. So just please know that, but feel free to use premium at macgeekgab.com as well. In the last week, we've had premium contributions from, let's see, we had $50 from John in Studio City. And then we had $25 contributions from, let's see, Mike in Raleigh, Roger in North Charleston, Chris in Windsor, Craig in Pace, Jeffrey in Windsor as well. Is this the same Windsor? Are we looking at the same Windsor? No, different Windsors, different states. Michelle in Quebec, Jonathan in Woodside, Paul in Pomona, Ralph in Bangor, Bruce in Decatur, Jimmy in Cushing, and David in Troutdale. Those are all $25 subscriptions. Actually, that's not correct. That the Jimmy in Cushing was a $30 contribution. And then we had $10 contributions in the last week from Stephen in Costa Mesa, James in Melbourne, Olga from Bellevue, Nick in Mount Clemens, Tony in Middleborough, Robert in Columbiana, Jason in Charleston. Thank you to all of you who have contributed this week and at any time to Mac Geek Gab Premium. Really, it makes a huge difference in allowing us to do what we do. And then we did get, we also support the new value for value is what it's called. I mean, I think what we've always done is value for value, which means we do the show. You send us what you think it's worth, and that's fine. The whole podcasting 2.0 value for value, which currently happens with crypto payments. We got 2,000 Satoshis from Squeegee this week. So thank you for that too. That was done, I believe, with the Fountain app. So if you're interested in that, you can go check that out. We'll put links to all this stuff in the show notes because that's how you do it. And those are always at macgeekgab.com. So now it's time to talk about some cool stuff found, Pete.
Oh, yeah, man.
Oh, yeah.
Get your wallets out, folks.
Yeah, well, not necessarily
not too bad
for all of this. No,
there's some good ones this week that are
Rod
downright
L.
free.
Rod L was the MVP of cool stuff found, and really of other things. I think we opened the episode with that spirit level tip from Rod as well. So you're crushing it this week, man. OnyX for macOS Sonoma is out, and that is important. OnyX is smart. It won't run on an operating system it's never seen before, and it will tell you this when it launches. So, if you had tried to launch OnyX to do some troubleshooting on macOS Sonoma prior to whatever it was, I think Wednesday or Tuesday of last week, you would have gotten a message, you got to go download a new version. And now you can go download that version. So we'll put a link in the show notes to where you can go get it. But yeah, OnyX for Mac OS Sonoma is out, and I am happy about that. Rod also sent in recently a cool stuff found for Revolver, which is a plugin for Chromium browsers. So for like Chrome, of course, or Edge. He says, we just set up 40 cameras for a manufacturing facility. They wanted a couple of big, like 75-inch TVs that could show all the different camera views. We set up a Mac Mini running Edge. We open the tabs that we want with all the different camera views. Okay, so you're using something that, puts the camera views in a browser window. Okay, great. Opening each camera up in tabs, and then you run this Revolver plugin, which automatically rotates through your open tabs. And we have Revolver rotate through them at whatever interval we desire. It'll works for different kinds of real-time dashboards and that sort of thing. He says, and now we just have a rotating thing where you can see the cameras because we have them up in browser windows. My guess is if your camera, your security software allowed you to have, say, set up multiple views where you had 4 cameras on one tab and 4 cameras on another and 2 on a third, then you could rotate through that because Revolver is just rotating through the tabs. So I like that. That's one of those, again, it sticks in the back of your head until you need it. And you're like, wait, there's a way to do this that's simple, right? So yeah, I like it.
No, that's cool. And Rod's about to hit his 3 cool stuff found limit.
I think that's right. You're right. Rod also shared with us this week Tresorit, Tresorit, and more specifically, send.tresorit.com. He said, I was listening to Mac Geek Gab 1002, where Dave, you were talking about sharing a 200 meg file with the live chat. That was in the post show, but I did share a 250 meg file with the songs that you hear throughout Mac Geek Gab. And he says, I thought I would share something I use and have good luck with. And it is this Tresorit, the send functionality of Tresorit, he says, is a great way to send large and confidential files. You can password protect them, uses end-to-end encryption, and you can send for free files up to 5 gigs in size. So,
dang.
Yeah, I know. So I don't know that any of the things we've talked about so far here on Cool Stuff Found are going to cost anybody anything, Pete.
No coin yet. That's about to change.
No coin yet. It is. It's fair. We were talking about mice, and not the bad kind of mice, but the mice that you might use with your computer. And Targus, I recently got a chance to check out the Targus ErgoFlip No, not ErgoFlip. You're not going to flip your ego around. That's a different thing.
ErgoFlip
Eco Smart Mouse, easy for me to say, which is, it's built from eco-friendly materials, recycled materials. It is built to be ergonomic. It's got like a nice curve to it so that it sits up on one side. So when you put your right hand down on it, your hand is at the right angle, and you're not like twisting your arm. Of course, if you were to put your left hand on it, though, Pete, if it was somebody, say like you, who's left-handed, or like me, who often likes to use the mouse with my left hand anyway, it would be awful for your hand, right?
Yeah.
No, this one is magic. The base of the mouse is separate from the top of the mouse, and you simply pull it off. It's connected via magnets. You pull it off, you turn it around, you drop it back down, and now it's perfectly suited for your left hand. It's amazing. $60. Yeah.
That's
so we'll
awesome.
put a link to that in the show notes.
And if you buy one of these, this is the one time you can honestly say you have mouse.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Because nobody has mouse.
Nobody has mouse. That's right. That is correct.
But this time you do.
This time you might, unless you bought it, unless you're buying it to like replace another mouse, and then you'd have to throw out the other mouse.
Right.
But yeah, nobody has mouse. That's correct. That is correct. I'm trying to think of other cool stuff found. Yeah. So we talked back in episode 994, Pete, about parking solutions. And I mentioned ParkWiz for, booking parking for like airports or other things like concerts and things like that. Lou in Vermont, and that's actually Lou's handle that Lou goes by, and I'm assuming it's true, says...
Right.
Says, I checked it out with a dummy reservation, and I need to tell you that on-air parking will do much better for you price-wise than ParkWiz. We've used on-air a couple of times in New York City the last 2 years for a 1-week stay and didn't pay more than $110 for the week.
Wow.
And yeah, which is really good.
Because you can find parking for $110 a night in New York.
Oh, easily. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, for long-term stays, on-air parking is a great one. Since this came in, I was going to a concert in Boston and booked parking late. I normally book parking when I buy my concert tickets because it's how I work. And I did not for this one. And the show sold out. It was at a small theater, and it was in like Brighton. So there's not a ton of parking, like public parking lots that you can reserve in advance there. There's street parking, but we were going to be running tight on time, I think, as we were getting there. And I wanted to know where we were going to park. So I looked at ParkWiz. Everything was sold out other than something that was like a mile and a half away. I was like, yeah, no. On-air parking, nothing. And then for whatever reason, I don't know, I started searching and I saw Spot Hero. I'm like, well, let me try Spot Hero. I forgot something about Spot Hero, Pete. ParkWiz and on-air parking are using parking lots that are parking lots, like as a business venture, right? Spot Hero is like the gig economy of parking spaces.
I was going to say, so it's more social engineering in there, or social media in this. Okay.
Yeah, it's like, the Airbnb of parking spaces. And sure enough, I found it was a duplex or a triplex or something, an apartment building-ish, maybe a 5-minute walk from where we were going. So closer than any of the lots that I would have bought through the other things. And I paid $13 for my spot. The other lots would have wanted $25. And they were very clear about it. It was like, look, there's 6 parking spaces around our building. You can only use 3 of them. The other 3 are used by other people. So here's where you can park. And they had pictures. It was super clear, really easy. And I, pulled up to the house and I drove behind it. I'm like, I hope this is right. And sure enough, I get back there and it all looks right and everything worked out. So Spot Hero is probably what I'm going to try for a lot of things. So it's the Airbnb of parking spots. Exactly.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Because someone has 2 spots at their house and they can give up one and make some coin on it.
Correct. Yeah, make a little bit of coin. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right. While we're here, we've had some cool stuff found floating for a little while. And listener Ben said back in 987, you were talking about different Find My things to use for your wallet or whatever. And he tells us about the Pebblebee Card, which of course we'll link in the show notes. And it has a rechargeable battery because that's what we were looking for in 987. Right. And he says the rechargeable battery lasts 12 months. The charger is proprietary, so it's not as elegant as a Qi charger, and you got to not lose it for the 12-month period. This is going to be the key, folks. Take a picture of what drawer you put it in, and save it with the name battery charger in notes, or Pebblebee charger, that which was a quick tip we got a couple weeks ago.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he says it's better than a card that must be disposed of every couple of years or whatever. So yeah, thank you for that, Ben. That's great. I like it.
The question is, you may or may not know, is it Find My?
Yes. Oh no, that's the whole point. Okay. It's Find My.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good.
Yep.
Right.
That's the yep. Sorry, I should have articulated that.
No worries. That's what I was asking. So it's not a separate app.
Yep. No, not a separate app. And then listener Jedd tells us, we've been talking a lot about shortcuts lately. He says, I was poking around for a way to schedule sending text messages like you can for email. And although I'm not there yet, it led me down a rabbit hole to a pretty geeky tool that seems perfect for cool stuff found. And it is Data Jar for shortcuts. This provides persistent storage for shortcuts. It's an app. You download the app onto your phone, and then you use shortcuts to populate data into it and pull data out of it. It's synchronized using iCloud, so it's now on all of your devices. It understands JSON, which is a very standard way of sending data around. And if it's built for shortcuts and it works fine right inside your shortcuts, it's got integration there. It is free with a tip jar. So if you I would say download it, mess with it, and if you start using it, well, by all means, send them some coin. And it is, because it syncs with iCloud, it's sort of naturally built to support offline storage. So you have access to your data even when you're in airplane mode or otherwise not connected. And then as soon as you're connected, it'll sync and push what you put in there up and grab what other devices have pulled down. So yeah, if you're doing stuff with shortcuts, Data Jar may well be the magic little thing here. And I can see why he would have found this looking for scheduling a send, because if you have one shortcut that takes the message that you typed and puts it in there, and then you trigger another shortcut via different means to send something, well, now it's got to go get the data from somewhere, but it's a bit of data that the other shortcut could see. Shortcuts only have local storage. Now with Data Jar, that first shortcut can push this into Data Jar. The second shortcut can go and retrieve it because it knows how to do that. And you coded both of them, so you know what you called the variable, and boom, you're in good shape. Yeah. So yeah. And it looks like it's really easy to use. I mentioned that it uses JSON. It does, but it is really built to be used inside shortcuts. And so you're going to have an easy time integrating this, even if you've never even heard of JSON before. JSON, JavaScript Object Notation. I don't know. Yeah, something like that.
Sounds good to me.
Sure. Sounds great. You know that sounds good, Pete?
The band?
You got it.
Oh, how did I know?
I know.
I see Jedd's been struggling with what I've been struggling with for years, too, because it was just almost a throwaway line there in his email.
What's that?
I'd love to be able to schedule text messages to go later.
Yep.
If I'm on a jump seat at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'd like to be able to send a text that arrives at 6, which is before I land. Oh. But after somebody, wakes up, so as not to disturb them in the middle of the night. And
shortcuts wouldn't do it because you aren't online. No. Right, your phone would need to be online.
Clearly, it's going to need it in order to accomplish that. It needs somebody to be able to tie into all the phone network. But to have a server to grab that message, store it, and then send it as if it were from me. So you would need an account. All kinds of things. All kinds of hurdles to be hurdled.
So there are most SMS addresses, which would be like your phone number.
Right.
Also have most providers offer an email address that will go to SMS. But if someone replies to that, they would be replying to whatever email it was sent from.
Right.
But you could schedule an email send from an always-on device somewhere.
Yep.
And have that send, and then it will send a text message, but it's going to be people aren't going to receive it. It's a little different. That's all.
Yeah. But it'll be received as a text.
it would be received as a text.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant.
So that it's a workaround.
There
it's
you go.
Not,
well, yeah, I could put Mail Butler on my server in the basement and send them.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So
there you go. We've just solved another one for you, folks.
That's as close as I'm going to get. Man, it has been a morning of troubleshooting, Pete. Woo. Oh, I feel good though. Like this kind of thing energizes me, even though it wears me out. But it's fine.
We've had enough troubles for one day.
Nobody knows the troubles I've seen, except everybody who was watching on YouTube and in Discord with us, because you played along. So thank you for playing along, whether you did it live with us or for all of you who listened. We recorded it for you since we saw you weren't all here. We recorded this, and that's why we pushed it out. That's right. Yeah. Thanks for hanging out with us. Thank you for subscribing to the show. If this is just your first time listening, or if you listen as a one-off, please subscribe to the show. That way you're always going to get it. And then share the show with a friend. Please, please, please. Thank you to all of you who have already shared the show with your friends. Thank you to all of you who are a part of this Mac Geek Gab family that we all get to be a part of in any way. Even if you're the only thing you do is listen, you haven't yet sent in an email or anything, totally fine. We're happy to have you and are very thankful to have you. It's not even happy. I mean, it is happy, but it's a happy thankfulness. So thank you so much for listening. And thanks to CashFly for providing all the bandwidth to get the show from us to you. Thanks to our sponsors, of course, piavpn.com/MGG, where you get all those great discounts on your VPN plan. And to Barebones at barebones.com. Of course, you can learn about all our sponsors at macgeekgab.com/sponsors.
Those guys.
That's us.
Listen. Check them out.
That's it. Pete, you gave me a new shirt recently, and it says something on the front. Can you read for the folks who are just listening?
I'm squinting. Didn't know there was an eye test today, but I think it says, "Don't get caught."
It does.
Made on a
It does. Thanks for hanging out with us, folks.
See ya.
Later.